Well, I'm getting bitten by ants already. I've been in the Australian bush for about 5 minutes, and I'm already getting attacked. And look at this though; it's gorgeous. Look at this, beautiful, beautiful little spot. Just found a nice, quiet little posse out of the sun. And Australian heat is pretty intense. And you can sort of see down here, got a bit of a river. So I just, I love economics and I love researching money, and I'm always trying to understand what's happening in the world. And I've really got to be honest with you, but I've been thinking a lot about where humanity's going. And I'm sure you've heard the theory that says that we're like the seventh civilization, like major civilization. And, before us, they were wiped out for whatever reason. I don't know too much about it, but I mean, it's a very, very interesting theory. And it really makes me think, like, what happened to those civilizations? Did they do it to themselves? Were they as advanced as we were? Because, I mean, we can only see dinosaur records because of just how big they were a lot of the time, or just the, unusual way that they just sometimes happened to be preserved. Even early humans, early hominins, it's really hard to find that much evidence of, Lucy, for example. We've got the fossil from Lucy, who I think represents Homo erectus, and yet we've only got a jawbone, and we've got so little to go off because it's just a lot of bones just don't survive. So it kind of seems completely plausible that we may not really know much at all. So that's always kind of been a theory of mine, is that everything that we think we know, is there life on, other planets or other universes or, other solar systems or any of that kind of stuff? I mean, again, what do we know? Like we literally could just be amoebas living in something that's much bigger than we are, and we think we're important, but maybe we're slightly more important than other amoebas around us or whatever, but I don't know. It's just, who knows, right? Who knows? There's so many thoughts going on out there. Anyway, I've been thinking a lot about where we're going. I've got to stay out of the sun because it's going to kill me otherwise. This Australian heat. This is the middle of winter, and it's still probably mid-20s Celsius. I really don't know where we're going. But when you look at AI and you look at just life in general, there's a lot of things that don't make sense. Like, why are we here? What are we doing? What are we trying to achieve? I mean, our goal is to reproduce. Why? We're born with the desire to reproduce. And then, then we get things like the government comes along and says, okay, well, let's encourage feminism because that's going to get all the girls working, and that's it keeps the Ponzi scheme, the financial system that we use, the fractional reserve banking system and debt-based society, keeps that going, because the Ponzi scheme collapses if we don't have more customers. It's as simple as that. You know what I mean? So you get the girls working, and then now the family unit's been affected, which means that we're not really thinking about the long term. We're always thinking about now. What can we do right now that's going to make a big difference, but later on down the track it's going to be a big problem? We'll deal with that then. And then the backup plan is always going to be mass immigration. Everybody around the world's trying to work out why. Why do we have all this mass immigration? That's why, because it's to keep the Ponzi scheme going. When you get a wealth divide, you get a lot of people that don't want to do those bottom jobs. And a lot of people expect to have a degree. That's the bare minimum now. 1 degree is the bare minimum. If you don't have a degree, I've had girls reject me because I don't have a degree. Because I started my own company when I was really young. I was a CEO of my own company really young. And I've always been self-employed pretty much. So it doesn't really make a lot of sense that that's the norm, is to have a degree. And for example, my ex-wife was a lawyer. And when she would go for a job interview, she'd be up against, hundreds of other applicants, because they're all going for the same job, because there's so many people with the same degree. And then, now trades, well, in my country anyway, in Australia, trades are now, paying so well. If you're a plumber, oh my God, like these guys are earning $300 an hour, crazy stuff. So and that's what happens. That's what happens when it becomes top heavy. And it also creates a massive wealth divide, which is exactly what happens when you get, all these people at the bottom that become poorer and they didn't invest in assets, because generally things have to go up, because if it doesn't go up, if you don't have a CPI every year, CPI like an increase every year, then your economy is going backwards. And that's what happens when you have a debt-based system. And the problem is that if it doesn't go forward, then it means you're dying. But at the same time, if it does go up too fast, it means you have really bad inflation, and then you have to have wages that try to keep up with that. And if the wages don't keep up with that, well, then you get a bigger divide, and it means that the people that are working are actually being punished for it. And then you get a lot of things like what's happening in my country, where you have bracket creep, and I actually mentioned this quite a few years ago when COVID hit. I said, I guarantee you, in a few years' time, we're going to see really bad bracket creep. And it's simply happening because if they don't adjust the tax brackets, and my country, if you earn around $18,000-$19,000, then you pretty much don't pay any tax, right, under that. And then the next bracket, you pay a little bit, and then it keeps going up and up and up, right? But the thing is that everything's gone up in my country, like maybe 50%, something like that. So if everything's gone up, then that means that wages also had to increase. Now, they haven't increased to the same level, but they have increased, which means that there are a lot of people that are suddenly earning more money, and the government's pocketing more money overall because people are paying more tax. It's kind of a pretty gross system overall, so people are actually being punished for working, which is one of the reasons why I don't work. I haven't worked for a long time. I look after myself. I manage my own portfolio. I trade where I can if I have time. And a lot of the time, I work on properties. I do it as a bit of a hobby. I look after my own mental health, and then I have a lot of opportunity to think, and to research and to read, and then I get to share it with you on a beautiful, gorgeous winter's day in the middle of Australia. And why would I want to be at work? Just helping the government to be more inefficient with the money I give them, because they don't know what they're doing. But we now work for them. We're the batteries for the system. Don't get stuck in there. Anyway, kind of been thinking a lot about the whole AI thing and where we're going, and I've heard Elon Musk kind of talking about, I think he calls it the level 1 society or something like that. And it's basically saying that, once we reach a peak, like a pinnacle, our civilization becomes something different. And from what I kind of understand, it sounds like nobody will have to work. And it's funny because when I heard Elon Musk mention this is actually a thought that I've had a few times myself. I've never heard anybody mention it before, but I've had this thought myself a few times. And I've always thought, I wonder what's going to happen once we get to a point where nobody needs to work anymore because everything's been done for us. How do we survive? How does it work? And this kind of whole conversation, I've been having this conversation with my mates who are all very, very smart guys. And the only thing that I can think of is that basically this is going to end up being maybe a little bit like the Hunger Games. Think about that, right? You got the massive wealth divide. You got the poor people that are on the outskirts that are probably the mentally ill, probably the low IQ, probably, I don't know, just those that haven't done well in life generally. And they kind of get pushed on the outskirts of society. And then all the wealthy are kind of, coddled by the government and looked after, and just basically no one really has to work anymore. I guess if you do work, it's extra pocket money, or I don't know how it's going to work, but I'm sure there are still things that people will want to do, because it's human nature to want to improve things and grow. So I can just imagine that, surely people will still do stuff, but maybe we can start to do stuff that we want to do. But then I also think about this, why are we as humans the only ones that have to pay to exist? I think about this all the time. Like, if I want to go and drink some water, I mean, first of all, we polluted the water, so I can't just go and drink out of the river. And then if I want to go and get some water from the supermarket, you know, a bottle of water, like a small bottle or cold bottle, can be a few dollars. And I mean, why are we paying to drink water? I don't see any animals doing that apart from pets, and their owners are paying for them. It just blows my mind that we've allowed ourselves to get to this point. Okay, you could argue, yeah, like, you know, society works because we've allowed ourselves to grow and have more innovation, and we're heading towards that, you know, that society, that civilization that we think is going to be perfect. But I have trouble believing it 100%, because at the end of the day, I mean, we're still very, very under-evolved, in my opinion. I mean, we still want war. We still want to fight and argue over religion. You know, we want to steal ground or take ground, or we get offended because someone took that land off us before, and we want it back now, you know, hundreds of years later, or whatever. Or people fighting, saying like, you know, we're the original inhabitants of this land, and, you know, therefore you should give it back to us. And then you do research and you find out that they weren't there first. There were people there before them. And you know, like New Zealand, for example, you know, the Maoris went there, and there was a few people there in the Chatham Islands, and the Maoris ate them. So, I mean, like, who really owns what? You know what I mean? Like, you know, and then we have this idea of ownership. But what is all that? What even is ownership? Like, why do we think that we own a piece of land? So I wonder if this is the seventh civilization, and, you know, are we in the early stages, or are we coming to an end? There's a lot of things to think about. I don't know the answers. I don't think anybody knows the answers, but it's an interesting conversation to have. But either way, I'm just seeing a lot of people are really unhappy now. It really makes me think, what are we doing? If everybody's so unhappy, why are we doing it this way? You know, it's like, okay, let me give you an example. I've pretty mentioned this in other videos before too, but basically you have to work, because that's the only way that you can own your car and your house. But then you have those things so you can live near your job, so you can get to your job. And then if you want something better so you can compete with your neighbors, then you have to go probably more into debt, or you have to save vigorously. Most people don't have the patience for that, because we're over dopamine society, which means that we just need everything now. People can't wait. If I can't afford something, I don't buy it. I don't have any debt. And I've always done it that way. When I can afford it, you know, or if I think it's a good deal, or I'll do my research, then I'll consider it. But it has to absolutely be the best deal I can get. It has to be the best thing that I can get. It has to be the best option, and it has to fulfill a need that I think is going to be there for longer than a short time. So it has to be very, very, very necessary. A lot of people don't do that. They'll just go to the shops, they'll go, oh, look at that there, I need that, and they'll buy something that they don't really need, and then, you know, it just ends up in the spare room, and they've just wasted all this money on it. Maybe they had to borrow money to get it. Maybe they put it on the credit card. You know what I mean? If they don't pay the credit card off, then they've got to pay fees and interest. So the thing is, you got to understand is that the government wants us to be in debt. They absolutely need us to be in debt because they want us working until we die, right? I stopped working around about 40 years old, and my staff started running my company for me because I told them I was done. I didn't want to do it anymore. I was satisfied. I had enough money to reinvest and to sustain my lifestyle. And I just wanted to keep going in that direction. And I just don't understand why more people don't do it my way. I understand there are people that need the satisfaction of keeping busy and doing something. And I'm sure if you're doing a job that makes you feel fulfilled, by all means. I mean, I renovate houses as a hobby. Every day I'll do a little bit here and there. It's not like I'm working 12 hours a day or anything like that. I just did some painting before. I started painting the doors. Really beautiful, vivid white, and I had to do a little bit of patchwork on one of them. And while it's drying, I thought, you know what, I'll come and have a bit of a discussion, a bit of a rant, talking about what's going on in the world, because, you know, why are we here? You know, why is everybody so unhappy? Like, I don't meet too many people that are really super happy anymore. You know, and then the government's there, like finding more ways to get money from us, and and then they're giving us vaccines that now might be causing cancer, and there's I heard things, who knows what's real and what's not, but they're putting estrogen in the water, and maybe in America, I'm not sure if it's everywhere, but to try and feminize men, because if you can control men, then you can control society, because men are the ones that will stand up. They won't say much, but they'll stand up eventually and do something about it. And the easiest people to brainwash is women, because if you brainwash them, they're loud and they're passionate because of being more emotional. And depending on where in their monthly cycle they are, it's probably going to change how they receive that information. And there's a lot of girls and a lot of cycles going on, and these girls are just on the internet talking all kinds of smack. And the government's kind of got them on board, and they don't realize they're being used as a part of the greater plan. I mean, this is all information that's reasonably well known now. Oh, by the way, I want to show you this here. Look at this. So I don't know if you can see that, but there's a lot of trash there. And so I was traveling for 6 years. And since I've come back to Australia, I've just noticed how much worse this place is. Like, I'm not even, and when I talk to people here, they don't see it. They don't see that it's worse. And I was living in a third world or a developing country. So when I compare Australia to there, I can see that country was growing and this country is declining. That's one of the things that I can see straight away. People here don't really see it as easy. Some people do. Most people just feel it, like, mentally. They just feel really unhappy. But a lot of people don't see what I can see, because it's really clear to me, right? When I came back initially, everything was about 40% more expensive. Renovating costs, for example, like, I have a lot of my old receipts I can compare quite well. For example, I used to pay $3.50 for my coffee, and now it's over $5. It maybe doesn't seem like a lot, but when you put that across all of your expenses and your utilities, it adds up, and wages haven't kept up. So what do you do? Just thinking out loud. This is just a lot of thinking. I've been thinking a lot about a lot of the stuff, and trying to think about the best way to deal with this, and to be involved with whatever society is trying to do. And the only thing the only conclusion that I can come to is that you just need to not play. You need to not play in this system. And I mean, don't get caught in the rat race. I've noticed this little trend where a lot of young people, it happened to me when I was 15, because I moved out of home when I was 15, and they gave me a checkbook straight away. I didn't even understand what a checkbook even was. I was a country boy, no idea. They gave it to me, and I got myself into debt. Then I realized, I've got to pay this back. And it's sort of, then I've noticed it. I've noticed that it happens. Like, I see a lot of, kids here. They'll come out of school, and then they want to go into uni and get a degree and compete with 500 people for a job. And then, they have to go into debt for that, because nobody can afford to pay for their schooling, because it's so expensive. And then they need a car so they can get to uni, or a motorbike, and then they've got to go and get a license, which costs more money and training and time. And you kind of, from the very beginning, you're instantly stuck in debt. And I just want to say that it's like, anything you can do to not get stuck in that rat race, like in the very beginning, you gotta stay out of it. If you got kids that are getting to that age, you got to make sure that somehow they make better choices and don't get stuck in debt. It's an easy thing to think, like, oh yes, go to uni, get a massive debt, and then that puts pressure on them. And then when you're under pressure, you have to make certain decisions that are not your own. That's the problem. When I make decisions for me, I literally can make whatever decision I want to make. I can think like, I want to go and move here, or go and buy a property there, renovate that, maybe try a bit of sunshine. Ants biting me, ow. Welcome to Australia. Oh yeah, and by the way, in Australia, don't go in there. because something will kill you. Always. That's how it works here. You just don't go too close to the grass. You know, it's like, yeah, it's beautiful. I mean, the water's a terrible color, but yeah, you don't go near that. Even the ants are trying to kill me. So yeah. Anyway, 20 minutes of ranting, just a bit of a think, just a bit of a, just get some stuff off my mind that I've been thinking about. And I'm always thinking about how I can, grow based on what's happening. And the thing is, like, the last stages of a managed decline, I guess, if you can, the financial system straining. Once they don't have the control over the financial system anymore. It's a very loud truck. You always have this stage towards the end where you see really high inflation, like you see inflation get out of control, right? But I believe this time, because we've printed our dollar so badly and GDPs are not really improving, and when you've got a dollar that's backed by GDP, and then you're seeing like places like my country where it's just getting worse, and they haven't really put the infrastructure in place to give us much of a future. And then, you realize, like, the only reason they could print money before was because, the infrastructure kind of allowed for it. And then they could just raise wages, and it kind of like, it was always like, you create one problem and then you got to fix all these other problems. And then eventually you got to fix the first one again. And that's kind of the way that it seems to always work. So really, the main takeaway after all of this is you got to have assets, and you got to have the assets that are going to be good during these kind of times. I mean, the 1920s, the Great Depression, we saw hyperinflation before it all turned to crap, and we're seeing a lot of similarities. And then what did we see just after? Obviously we saw World War I just before that, then we saw World War II just after that. It was a tough time. Like, there's a lot going on that time. And you might think, like, just like 10, 20, 15 years, that kind of thing is not a very long period. Like, it is quite a long period of time, but I remember 20 years ago like it was yesterday. It's not that, like, it's very, very fast. So it's all in the same time period, really. And that's what I think. So I think we're going to see a similar thing here. And the point is about the time period thing is that this is probably something that is going to happen, maybe over a while. Maybe we'll see another Great Depression. Maybe it's going to be even worse, because maybe we've actually killed the financial system this time. And I think what I'm hearing a lot of people say is that we're probably going to have to move on to a new system, a new way of thinking. And, if Elon Musk is right, we're basically working towards a civilization where whether you save a lot now, whether you have a lot now, it doesn't really matter from what he's saying. And I'm kind of starting to wonder if that actually might be true. So anyway, there's some thoughts there. I'm going to go and enjoy the rest of this beautiful day and do a little bit more work on my house. And I'll talk to you next time.